Hello everyone! If you chose path B, or this more advanced way of deploying a WordPress website, it's because you are already familiar with the basics of the Git version control system. And if you like Git and you've made it a central part of your workflow, this means that at the end of every day, or maybe even several times a day, you are committing your progress into your local Git repository and then pushing that up to a service like GitHub or Bitbucket. So if that's already a habit of yours and it's something that you're doing on a regular basis, it would be silly to not take advantage of that. So why don't we set things up so that your repository is your single source of truth? Meaning, instead of having to manually upload files to your web host to power your live website, instead, let's set up your GitHub or Bitbucket repository to automatically upload your most recent files and changes up to the web host for you. Or in other words, anytime you update the master branch on your GitHub or Bitbucket repository, you will also effortlessly be updating your live website. Okay, and that's exactly what we are going to set up in this lesson. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first step. If you have not already, you need to create a Git repository for the folder or directory that is powering our local dev environment WordPress. So for example, if you are using my VirtualBox and Vagrant setup, you probably have a folder somewhere named local sites, and within it you have a folder for each of the websites you're going to be creating. So we have this one folder named Fictional University, and this contains all of our automation files as well as our actual website in the app folder. So I would set up this Fictional University folder to be my Git repository. So whether you want to cd into this folder with your command line and then run git init, or if you use a Git user interface program, whatever you usually do is fine. So go ahead and create a repository and then push it up to your favorite service, which is probably either GitHub or Bitbucket. In my case, I like to use Bitbucket because they offer private repositories for free. If you have a premium GitHub account, that will work because then you are allowed to create private repositories. But if you only have a free GitHub account, I would not use GitHub in this instance. Because remember that our WordPress config file contains sensitive information. It has the username and password to connect to our database. So including that file in a public repository would be a huge security breach. Now, if you forgot about that and you've already pushed your progress up to a public GitHub repo, that's okay, don't panic. Because you can always just go into your web hosting cPanel, and we already learned how to change the password for a database user. So be sure to go reset that password if you accidentally exposed your database settings. And moving forward, just make sure that your repository is private. Okay, now before we learn how to set things up so that our repo automatically deploys and uploads to our web host, I first want to cover that local.php file that we created in the previous lesson. So for example, if you view the file tree for your repository, right, the screen that shows you all of your files and folders, if I go into my app folder, remember that in our previous lesson, we created this file named local.php. And we set up an if statement within our config file so that if this file exists, the config file will use database settings that make sense for a local environment. And if this file does not exist, it will use the database settings for our live or production server. So if we are going to set up our repo to automatically upload or deploy to our web host, we want to make sure that this local PHP file does not exist in our repository. However, we do want it to exist within our computer. So basically, we want it to be on our hard drive or our solid state drive, but we don't want it to be tracked by Git or to live within GitHub or Bitbucket. So let me show you how we can make that happen. On your computer, navigate to the folder where that local.php file lives, and just temporarily, instead of deleting it, let's just move this file out of that folder and onto our desktop. So basically just some location that has nothing to do with our Git repository. So now in the eyes of our repo, we have basically deleted that file. So that's step 1. Now, step 2 is to set up a gitignore file so that even if we add that file back into this folder in the future, the Git version control system will completely ignore it. So within the main folder where you created your Git repo, for me that's right inside Fictional University, we want to create a hidden file in this folder named .gitignore. So in your text editor, if you open up the folder where your Git repo was created, if you are using my starter files from this course, you've already got a file here named .gitignore. But if you've been creating your own setup, you will want to create a .gitignore file. Okay, let's jump into that file. And up at the top, let's add a path that points towards that local.php file. So in my case, it would live within this app folder, and then its name is local.php. Let's go ahead and save that. So now, if in the future I add that file back in, Git will not care. It will not track that file at all. So back in my command line, or if you use a graphical Git program, that's okay, but basically commit all of your changes. So git add -a, that will commit all of my changes. So not only did I set up my gitignore file, but more importantly, I deleted my local.php file, right? Because I moved it to my desktop just for a moment. So I will go ahead and commit those changes, remove local.php from repo, and then go ahead and push up to my Bitbucket. Okay, and then if I refresh my Bitbucket view in my browser, and sometimes Bitbucket is a bit buggy, so you have to click out of the source and then back into the source view. But cool, you can see local.php no longer exists in my Git repo. So now that we've set up that gitignore, I can move my local.php. I can move that back into the folder where it should indeed live. So that way my local website still works. And since it's ignored, even if I run git status, Git doesn't even notice that I put that file back in place. Cool. So as soon as your GitHub or Bitbucket repo no longer contains that local PHP file, that means we are ready to move on to the next step, which is to set things up so that anytime you update your GitHub or Bitbucket repo, your updated files will get automatically uploaded to your web hosting account for you. Now, in order to set this up, we are going to want to use a third-party deployment service. And there are tons of these different services out there to choose from. Let me show you just a few. So first, there is DeployHQ. This is actually what I'm going to use in this course as a demo because they have a nice free plan. Even in addition to the free trial, there's a permanent free option where you can have one project and make 10 deployments per day, all for free. Okay, there's another deployment service named DeployBot. We used this service at my last job for all of our projects. I have nothing but good things to say about DeployBot, but we are not going to use it in this course because they do not offer a free account. And I don't want you to have to spend any extra money right now when you're learning. Okay, and then an example of another service is ftploy. ftploy is a bit bare bones. It doesn't have as many features as the other services, but it does offer a nice free plan. The free account gives you one project and you can make unlimited deployments per day. Now there's way more than just these 3 services out there, but this gives you a good idea that there's a lot to choose from out there, and you're free to make your own decision, but just for the sake of following along with me in this course, I encourage you to give DeployHQ a try. So right now, go ahead and pause this video and sign up for a completely free DeployHQ account. And just for the record, I am not in any way affiliated or partnered with DeployHQ. I'm just a fan of their service and they conveniently offer a free account to learn with. Anyways, go ahead and pause this video and then resume it once you've signed up for a DeployHQ account.